Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to week 11 of the playoff eliminator. This is going to be a very exciting episode. We have a lot of teams to go over today. This past Saturday, we had a lot of chaos in multiple conferences in the Big 10, in the Big 12, in the ACC, and also in the Group of 5, SEC as well. So this past weekend, we had a good amount of games that had great implications on the playoffs for this season. So many teams lost their opportunities for a playoff spot. We had a few teams that were eliminated, a few teams that are basically on the brink. The ACC had a bad week again for the second week in a row. So the ACC is a very interesting conference this season, probably the most interesting of all of them. And then we're starting to cut down the amount of teams that we have left. So we're down probably to the last 35, 30 realistic teams that can actually compete for a championship this season. So without much further ado, let's get to it. All right, so we're starting this playoff eliminator episode off with the Duke Blue Devils out of Durham, North Carolina. The Duke Blue Devils had a pretty strong season so far. They were still competing in their conference. They already have 3 losses. They picked up the 4th loss this past weekend, but they were still in the race for the ACC conference because they only had 1 conference loss. So we couldn't eliminate them just yet, even with their 3 losses, even though they basically had a 0.05% chance anyway. But they are now officially eliminated after they lost a close one to the Yukon Huskies. Yes, the Yukon Huskies. Shout out to them over there, because they're having one of their better seasons in recent memory. They are 7-3 now. Can't remember a time that Connecticut was that good at football. So it's been a while for them. So shout out to them. The Duke Blue Devils come up 3 points short to the Yukon Huskies on the road. So it was a shootout, 37-34. But that loss will definitely officially eliminate the Duke Blue Devils. So good season for them in the ACC, but just came up a little bit short this year. The TCU Horned Frogs. I have a lot of love for TCU, Texas Christian University, down there in Fort Worth, Texas, close to my old stomping grounds down there in Dallas. They have had a decent season as well. TCU is always a solid football program, so no surprises to see them competing this year. They were still in the Big 12 race themselves. They were right there behind Cincinnati, BYU, Houston, teams like that. But this past weekend, they lost again to Iowa State. The Iowa State Cyclones are already eliminated themselves. TCU was kind of trying to hang on to dear life, but with that loss, and it was at home, by the way, at home, 3-point loss, they come up short, and that officially eliminates the Horned Frogs. So great year for Texas Christian, but just came up a little short in the Big 12 race this season. They were right there with the BYUs and the Cincinnatis and the Utahs and all that, but just came up a little bit short. So better luck next season for TCU. Moving on to the Iowa Hawkeyes. So the Iowa Hawkeyes were one of the bigger storylines this past weekend. They were hosting the Oregon Ducks. Iowa still had an opportunity to get to the playoff. They only had 2 losses on the season. If they would have won out, especially beating Oregon, I think they definitely would have made the playoff. Well, they had a shot. They had a shot on Saturday. It wasn't like it was a blowout or anything. Anybody who watched that game, including me, that game was a rock fight. Exactly how Iowa likes it. They just like slinging rocks all game long. I think the score was 3-2. After the first quarter, it was literally 3-2 because of a safety. So, kind of shows you the kind of game that was. The final score was 18-16. Oregon ended up kicking a game-winning walk-off field goal to silence the crowd in Iowa City. The Hawkeyes had scored a touchdown in the last 3 or 2 minutes right before that on a long, just clutch game-winning drive. You thought it could have been game-winning drive, but it left too much time for the Ducks, and Oregon came up clutch themselves. Their quarterback, blanking on his name right now, but you know who I'm talking about. The quarterback for Oregon Ducks came up clutch, and he led them down the field for a game-winning walk-off field goal. and that basically eliminated Iowa. It's only Iowa's third loss, but as the Big Ten is shaping up this season, 3 losses is just not going to cut it. So now that we kind of got a better picture for what each conference is going to require for you to get there, I don't see Iowa being a 9-3 at-large bid. So it was either get to the Big Ten championship. Well, it was either win out and go 10-2 and get an at-large bid, or it was get to the Big Ten championship, which I do believe they no longer really have a chance to do with their 3 conference losses. Even 2 conference losses is not enough, because Indiana and Ohio State are still undefeated after Indiana barely escaped disaster this past Saturday. So Iowa is now officially eliminated. And piggybacking off of Iowa, we have their Big Ten rivals as well, the Washington Huskies, new from the Pac-12. Washington also had a very good season so far. They only had 2 losses coming into last weekend. They still had a shot to get to the playoff, to get an at-large bid, all those good things. Big Ten championship. Well, they had not as great a loss as Iowa did. Washington lost to Wisconsin. The Wisconsin Badgers, who I believe were like 2-6 and had been just blown out like week after week. Like they're just a really bad team right now. Like they're struggling to find any sort of hope over there in Madison, Wisconsin. So they found hope this past Saturday by taking down a ranked Washington team that still had high aspirations for their own season. So Wisconsin pulls the upset. And the Huskies' season basically ended in a disappointing way, losing like that to a bad team, because Wisconsin's not going to make a bowl game. Like, they would have to win 3 more games in a row to make a bowl game. That's probably not going to happen. So for Washington to lose to a team that, they're supposed to beat, especially when they still had, dreams on the line and goals on the line, that's a pretty bad loss. So Washington, their season is now officially over. But watch out for the Huskies, because they still have a chance to spoil Oregon's season. Oregon still has to play Washington, the old rivals, Pac-12 rivals. So Washington still has a chance to impact the playoff. Even though they might not make it themselves, they still have an impact on the playoff coming up. And that goes for Iowa as well. I didn't mention for Iowa, but they still play USC. And USC is still alive themselves for the playoffs. So both of those teams still have chances to ruin other people's seasons, even though they saw their own seasons come to an end this past weekend. Moving on to the Missouri Tigers. The Missouri Tigers out of the SEC. Me and Tom talked about it in our prediction of Missouri A&M before that game went down. I said in that video that Missouri does this. They're the kind of team that they're going to win 8-9 games every year, but they're not as good as their record suggests. You know what I mean? A Missouri 9-3 is not an Alabama 9-3. You know what I mean? Those are like 2 completely different 9-3s. We talked about how Missouri, they seem to have like the cupcake SEC schedule of all teams in that conference every single season. They literally started off this season by having like 5 home games in a row, which I've just never even seen before. And, of course, as I said, they'll find a way to not make the playoffs, and here they are, eliminated. Big Red X, after losing their 3rd game to Texas A&M this past Saturday. And even though I do believe that the only 3-loss teams to have a chance to make the playoff this season will come out of the SEC, I don't think Missouri is one of them, because I don't think, 1, Missouri is good enough, 2, their schedule is hard enough or good enough, and 3, that they have enough, wins to suggest that their resume is good enough to get picked for the playoffs. So I don't think Missouri is one of those 3-loss teams in the SEC, and since they picked up loss number 3, I think they are now officially eliminated. Don't see a way Missouri gets to the playoff. They don't really have a chance to get to the SEC championship anymore, so it's wraps for the Tigers season. But can't say I'm surprised. It was just a matter of time for the Tigers. They'll have another 8-9 win season just like they do every other year, but once again, it will not be the postseason for Missouri. These teams are not eliminated, these remaining teams we're going to talk about, but now we're getting into the playoff real implications, because these teams are still alive for the playoffs. The ACC, I don't know what's going on with the ACC. No one really does this season. We have a handful of good teams, no really great teams. I mean, we thought it could have been Georgia Tech, but once they lost to NC State, that kind of went out the window. So, bunch of good teams in the ACC this year. Can't seem to find one really team to stand out. You know, the Big 12 has two, and those two went at it this past weekend, and we found out that Texas Tech is that team. So Texas Tech is that team in the Big 12, and then you got BYU and Utah right behind them. Who is that team in the ACC? Is it Georgia Tech? I thought it was Georgia Tech. Well, it's definitely not Louisville or Virginia, because both of those teams are on the eliminator list this week because both of them lost. Both of them lost at home, by the way, to inferior opponents. So I guess they had a pact that they were both going to take L's this past weekend. Well, start off with Louisville, the Louisville Cardinal. After having a huge upset over Miami just a few weeks back, basically only had one loss on the season. We're riding high. Came into this past weekend and lost to California at home. California is eliminated already in the ACC. They're a pretty good team. You know, they're like a 500 type team, but not a game that you should be dropping at home. So a disappointing L for Louisville. That's not a game that they should lose, and that definitely set them back when it comes to the ACC race, because you can't lose too many games with these amount of good teams this season. Well, Virginia went ahead and did them a favor and said, hey, hold my beer, we got you. Well, Virginia, who was actually undefeated in ACC play because that NC State loss they had did not count against the conference. Well, they lost to Wake Forest at home, which was a worse loss. SMU also lost to Wake Forest, but Wake Forest is not very good. They're also hanging around 500, but they're not as good as Cal is. And also another loss at home. Virginia failed to score more than 10 points in this game, and Wake Forest only scored 16, and that was enough to win the game. So that was just a really bad loss, especially when it comes to later in the season when we're going to talk about resumes and things like that. This is going to be on Virginia's resume. Scored 9 points at home against Wake Forest. Like, that's just not a team that's going to compete for a national championship. So they're not eliminated, but when it comes to just even making the playoff and doing anything, like, we probably know none of these teams are really going to make that much of a splash. I think Georgia Tech or Miami, if any team out of ACC, has the best chance to do something in the playoff. But when it comes to these two teams, Virginia and Louisville, I think they proved to us that they're not those teams, because those are just not good losses. Those are not losses that teams that are playoff worthy are going to make. So these two teams are still alive. They're still alive in the ACC because, I mean, both of them lost. So Virginia has one loss. Louisville has two now. I can't remember how many conference losses they have, but, you know, both of them are still right there. Georgia Tech has a loss. Miami has two. SMU has one conference loss, but they have three overall. It's just a mosh pit right now. We still don't know who's going to be that team. So all those teams still have a chance to make the conference championship this season. So it remains to be seen. Very interesting to see how that conference shakes out, you know, as we get deeper into the season. Then we got Navy out of the group of five. Or excuse me, I need to start calling it the group of six. I got used to calling it the group of five. Now that we're including the Pac-12, I guess, in those conferences, is the group of six. And since I seen the playoff people calling it group of six, I got to start calling it group of six. The group of six, Navy, the midshipmen, went on the road to Notre Dame this past weekend, and Notre Dame just gave them a belt to ass. I mean, I don't know what else to call it, but it was belt to ass. So Navy, I saw it coming because we saw this last year. Navy was 8-1, 7-2, whatever they were last year, doing pretty well. Then they went to Notre Dame and got their pockets took. So same thing happened this season, or this game. They were missing their starting quarterback, but just got beat down, and Notre Dame is just a better team. Well, Navy, they're not eliminated because the group of five is just a mess this season. We don't have any undefeated group of five teams left. We're about to not have any more one-loss group of five teams left because Memphis lost again, which we'll talk about. They have 2 losses now. Navy lost again. They have 2 losses now. San Diego State, who we're about to talk about next, lost again. 2 losses. South Florida has 2 losses. North Texas has 1, maybe 2. I don't know what's going on in the group of five. None of those teams deserve to have a playoff spot. I can't lie to you, but one of them was going to have to. So Navy's not eliminated yet, even though they lost badly and this is their second loss. I can't eliminate them yet because we don't know who's going to be the Group of Five representative. Right now, it's starting to look like James Madison because James Madison only has one loss, and it was actually to Louisville, which is not a bad loss for them, but it remains to be seen. We're going to find out in these last few weeks. So welcome to the list, Navy. And then, like I was talking about, San Diego State. San Diego State got blown out, and it wasn't by Notre Dame. I'll tell you that. It was by the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. Yes, you heard me right. The Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. Yes, 38-6. A 30-point blowout to Hawaii. Now, Hawaii's not a bad team. Let me not disrespect Hawaii. They're not bad, but they're a 500 type Group of 5 team. This is not a team that you get blown out by if you're going to be a playoff team. So San Diego State was having a very good, quiet season. Nobody was talking about them, but they only had one loss coming into this game. They were 7-1, 8-1. Well, not anymore. They get blown out by Hawaii just when it seemed like they might have had a chance to start having their name called. Well, nope. Nobody seems to really want it out of the Group of 5 this season. Nobody wants that spot. Last season, it was like, can anybody take down Boise State? Now it's like, does anybody want? Does anybody want to be Boise State? Like, does anybody want to go? I don't know. Well, the Aztecs are now on this list as well after a terrible loss like that. But also can eliminate them as well because it's their second loss. I don't know. I can't eliminate these teams yet because we don't know. None of them are ranked. So we don't know what's going on, man. But we're just going to wait and see on what that Group of 5 spot's looking like. But it's going to be really interesting this year to see how it shakes out. And then the last couple teams we have to talk about are Memphis out of the Group of 5. Memphis, we talked about them before. They had a bad loss against UAB a few weeks back. Well, they lose their second game to Tulane. Tulane already has 2 losses, and Tulane lost to South Florida. So it's just a lot going on right now, man. Memphis beat South Florida. Now Memphis loses to Tulane. It's just a mess. The Group of 6, is a mess. The Group of 6 is just a chaotic frenzy right now. I don't know what to make of it. I don't have a team to even project to be the Group of 5 spot because I don't even know at this point. I have no idea. I want to say James Madison, but it's just because they're only one lost Group of 5 that seems to be left. So it is what it is at this point. And then last but not least, BYU. So BYU, yes, I know. They were just the number 8 team in the country, undefeated. Yes, I know. They're not eliminated or anything. However, they are now on the eliminator list. They're on the watch list. Why? Well, even though it was their first loss, the loss came late in the season, which is always bad when it comes to the playoff. We've seen that year after year. Like, don't lose late in the season. They will hold that against you. 2, they lost to the team that basically will be representing the Big 12 in the championship game in Texas Tech. So not only did they lose that tiebreaker because both of those teams are at the top, they played each other. Now they're under Texas Tech no matter what. You know what I'm saying? As long as the records hold steady. They are now the second team at best in the Big 12. You know what I mean? Because Texas Tech beat them and they're at the top. So you still got Cincinnati right there, and BYU and Cincinnati play, and that's going to be a huge game. That's probably going to determine who represents in that game. But still got Utah right behind them. I don't know, man. BYU's kind of seem like they're doing what they did last year, starting off 8-0, 9-0, and then losing those last 2-3 games and missing it all. Well, they're going to need to get it together because if they lose to Cincinnati and then Cincinnati wins out, it's wraps. You know what I mean? And they miss out once again. So BYU has to bounce back in these next few weeks because the Big 12 is cutthroat. Like, I don't think you can lose more than 2 conference games and still make it to the championship game. So there's too much competition this season. And then the last reason why BYU's on the list this week is because they got blown out. It wasn't too bad, but 29-10, was it? 29-10? Something like that? 30-9? I don't know, but it was bad. Like, BYU did not really compete at all in that game. I watched that game. It was all Texas Tech from beginning to end. Like, beginning to end, it was just Texas Tech doing what they wanted to do. BYU was just trying to get a first down. Like, they were struggling just to get a first down for the entire 60 minutes. And BYU got exposed. Haven't seen them play that terribly all season long. It could be a one-off, but like I said, we've seen this history from them before. So can the Cougars bounce back and finish how they need to finish in order to get to the Big 12 championship? Because it looks like Texas Tech already took one of those spots now. So one spot left for 3 teams: Utah, BYU, and Cincinnati. Who wants it? I don't know. But BYU, I think they're the best team out of those 3, but they're going to have to prove it on the field, of course. So remains to be seen, but BYU is now on the death list, because if they lose another game, I think it's wraps, just like it was last season. 10-2 wasn't good for them last season. 10-2 is not going to be good enough again this year either, I don't think. So BYU has to win out, I think, after that loss. But remains to be seen. We're going to find out in the last few weeks of the season. I can't wait to find out who is going to make the field, who is going to make the conference championships, because we probably won't know for sure until after conference championship week, because those games will also have playoff implications. So, because if you win, you're in. No matter what you're ranked at, if you win your conference championship, you're in, at least out of the Power Four. So, very exciting end to our season. It's going to be a very exciting finish. I can't wait to see it. That's all I got for the playoff eliminator this week. So, thank you for tuning in. Win your games out here. The Grim Reaper, he's looking for souls. He just claimed 5 more this past week, and 5 more souls went down. So we're running out of teams. We're getting to the very end. So tune in. These last few weeks are going to be really good, and then we're going to have a special episode before Selection Sunday. So tune in for that. The details on that are coming soon. But without much further ado, let me get up out of here. Playoff eliminator. Watch your back. Till next time.